Hello friends! Happy Thanksgiving! This video is all about pie. So a bunch of people have been asking for me to make a video with pie crust, from making it to rolling it out to how you work with it as far as blind baking it, and hopefully this answers all of your questions, although probably not, but a lot of your questions about pie. So when it comes to pie, there are several different kinds of crust that you can make, but the most traditional is called a shortbread crust. You may hear it used as that. In England, they make something called a hot water crust. That's a little bit different and a little bit trickier, but a shortbread crust is really easy to bring together, super versatile, and really forgiving so that you can make it look as beautiful in the pan as absolutely possible. So let's start with actually making the dough. So this recipe is my grandmother's. She wrote it for me in one of my little recipe books I got for Christmas one year. My whole family put in recipes that they make. So I can flip open this book. I have my whole family favorites right there, and one that my grandmother put in is her pie crust recipe. And she has literally written on the card, "Never fail pie crust." That is the name. I have been making it for years, and I can honestly tell you it has never ever failed me. So I'm going to teach you never fail pie crust right now. So you want to get a nice deep mixing bowl. In it you need 4 cups of flour, a cup and 3/4 of shortening. This is an all shortening pie crust, which in my opinion is the best. You'll see that some are made with just shortening, some are made with just butter, and some are made with a mix of both. I find that the just shortening crusts get flakier and are just more tender when you cut through them. That's what I'm looking for in a pie crust. So if that's what you and your family and your friends, whomever you're making this for, like, then this is definitely the recipe for you. So we've got the flour in here, we've got the shortening in here. You also need 2 tablespoons of white granulated sugar. You need about 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, just a pinch to throw in. And then if you have a pastry blender like this, you can use that, and you want to just get it until the shortening is like pea-sized in here. Shortening can be kept at room temperature. If you're using butter though, you do want to use cold butter. If you look at recipes, always cold butter, room temperature shortening. And mix that until you can kind of see the pieces forming here. This is not a super clean job, it's messy, but it's so delicious. And it's one of the quintessential things with baking, with flour, and wait till we roll it out, it'll be awesome. All right, so my dry ingredients are in here. They're all mixed together. To this, we're going to add 1 egg, 1/2 cup of cold water. Doesn't have to be ice cold, but it does need to be cold, just from the tap is fine, and 1 tablespoon vinegar. I know that sounds odd. It sounds odd to me too. I can't even stand the smell of vinegar. However, there's something about that that mixes it, it makes it work. So just trust me, follow that recipe. So I have them all in here. I've just whisked them, kind of combined them lightly with a fork, and we're going to dump straight in. There's no neat and easy way to do this next part. Don't you dare get a spoon. In the words of my grandmother, sometimes you just have to get your hands right in there. So clean hands into the bowl and start to mix this. And this should come together pretty quickly, which is one thing that I really like about it. I use this pie crust for fruit pies like blueberry, apple, blackberry. I use it for pecan pie, pumpkin pie, sweet potato pie. It's a really good go-to for that. It also works really well in a tart pan if you're interested in that. So keep mixing. If you notice, I'm rotating the bowl a little bit every time. That just helps you scoop and get all of that flour incorporated. And we're almost together already. That's how fast it is. Now with this pie dough, once you're finished, you're going to separate it into 2 parts. This makes enough for 2 9-inch pie pans, or the bottom crust and a top crust if that's what you're doing on your pie. Now I have found that with a little finesse, you can definitely fill an 11-inch pie pan with this as well. The 9-inch pans that I'm using today, which you'll see in a second, are deeper, but my 11 inches are wider and a bit more shallow. So I find that it still works for that as well. And your tart pans are usually 9 or 10 inches and it fits perfectly fine in there. So it has come together. It's here, it's glorious. We're just gonna separate this into two as equal as you can. You want to kind of press it into a disc form and wrap it in some kind of cellophane or press and seal, something like that, and throw those in the fridge. Let it chill for at least 4 hours. Overnight is even better. They will keep in your refrigerator for up to a week. So that, but through the magic of YouTube videos, wait, my hands here, I have one done already. So here is my cold pie dough. I'm gonna take that out. You will smell the vinegar when you open the package. That's okay. I promise you, you do not taste it. Otherwise, I don't think I'd like it nearly as much. Okay, so to roll out this dough, you want to get your flour. Really flour the surface well to start. I like to knead it just a little bit when it's cold and incorporate some of that extra flour. I find it gives me a smoother first pass when I go to roll out. And the less you have to work with it and roll it out and the colder you can keep it, the easier it's gonna be to work with in general. Cold is good. Okay. So we've got that kneaded pretty well. It's also a good, arm workout. Who needs free weights? You can just knead dough, right? Okay, so I'm gonna kind of press this back into that disc, fill in any cracks that are creating, so it looks like this. Let's flour the surface again. Like I said, be super generous with this. It's messy, it's all over, but it's half the fun of baking pie. Okay, put your dough down in the middle. I use a wooden rolling pin, whatever you like. And flour the rolling pin really well. Make sure you get the ends. I notice that's where it tends to stick the most for me. But there we go. Beautiful. And then we're just gonna roll out the dough. When rolling out the pie dough, you'll see maybe on TV shows or even other videos, a lot of people who roll out once, rotate and flip it. I don't flip it. I learned that when I took a class at Charm City Cakes. I will rotate it about a quarter turn and roll again. So you just want to rotate it. Flipping it actually makes it harder to get a nice even rollout. So like I said, I'm just going to keep rotating. You may see it's starting to come apart a little, or it doesn't look perfectly circular. That's fine. This, like I said, this dough is super forgiving. So then once you have a good handle on it, you can just start rolling a bit more without rotating it. What rotating does is it helps you get a more even roll instead of random pieces of dough that jut out on the sides. Now the trickiest part for me to judge, honestly, is how thick it is. Trust me, I mean, I've made pie, but pie presents its challenges, and a lot of them lie in the crust. Getting that right and getting it baked right is really important. My downfall is too thick of a crust. The thicker the crust, the longer it takes to blind bake. If you don't blind bake it long enough and then you fill it, the chances are you're going to end up with a soggy bottom. If you've watched British baking show, you definitely don't want a soggy bottom. So I'm really trying to be more aware and rolling it out thinner so that you get that flaky deliciousness, but it still holds all of your wonderful fillings. Okay, this is looking pretty good. So, because I am making these for other people's Thanksgivings, I am using my 9-inch pie pan. It is deep, like I said. And then this actually slides right into a box when it's finished. I got this whole little pack, like 12 of them with boxes and lids off of Amazon for like 24 bucks. So if you're making a lot of pies, or you want something easy where you don't have to worry about cleaning your pie dish, or you want to drop something off for someone during the holidays, this is definitely the way to go. So let's take our rolling pin, a little bit more flour, because now we're going to gently pick up our dough. And this is when you'll get a good idea of how thick it is as well. It's actually pretty good. And we're going to roll it back over the rolling pin. Place your pie pan here, and we're going to drop it right in. Sometimes you have to move it a little. That we can do. It's okay if it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, this dough is very forgiving, and it patches really well. So once you have it lined in, lift up the sides and just let it fall into the bottom, and gently press it into that round portion here, that edge where you can kind of feel with your fingers. We'll worry about making the edges pretty in a minute. Just get it so that it's flush with the bottom and with the sides of the pan. Okay. Now you'll see we have dough hanging over most places. Perfect, because we're going to make an easy edge here. But it is short one place here. That's fine. Take your extra dough, press it in, and no one will ever know because you're going to fill it. It's going to be filled with deliciousness. No one is going to be looking to see if the bottom is cracked, which I'm all about because sometimes it's not always pretty. But we got one nice, really good, solid piece. So something that I still struggle with, and lots of people struggle with, is their pie crust shrinking. This is a combination of things. It could be a combination of the fact that the crust is too warm, because once we finish this, we're going to put it in the fridge for at least an hour. You can shorten that time in half if you throw it in the freezer. I would recommend the refrigerator. The other reason is that their oven isn't hot enough when they blind bake. So we're going to try to make sure that both of those things are right. Okay, so it's pressed in here. You can do a couple different things with your edges. You could just cut it off, have it meet the top, and be a nice clean edge. That's perfectly fine. Or if you want to crimp the edges, I like to go around and just tuck extra crust under and then pinch it between my two pointer fingers to make kind of a ribbed edge there. And you can do that all the way around. You want to bring the crust up over the edge of the pie pan because it will shrink some, but then when it shrinks, it's going to just meet the edge kind of perfectly. So keep pressing those sides up, and it's okay then if it's going over the edge. That's kind of what you want. You can do that all the way around. If you didn't want to do this, that's okay. You can just leave extra on the end and press a fork into it. Some people really like that look as well. Gives it that grandma's pie look, kind of, where it's cooling on the windowsill, right? Okay. What sides you do can also depend what you're doing on top. So like I said, this pie crust recipe makes 2 9-inch pie crusts, or a bottom and a top of one. For these, I'm actually making a blackberry pie with a crumb topping and a sweet potato pie with no pie crust topping. So I'm not going to need that. However, for my apple pies, I do a lattice top. So I will use the other part of the dough to, once I chill it in the fridge again, to roll out and to create a beautiful lattice top. You could use it to do cutouts that you place on top. You could do a full cover more like a Dutch apple kind of thing, that's perfectly fine as well. We're almost done, I promise. Like I said, it's really forgiving, so it doesn't have to look perfect, because I can promise you it will taste good. And that is certainly what people are most concerned with. Okay, so pie crust is all in here. You can see it's up just over the edges. So I'm going to put this uncovered in the refrigerator for an hour. When that comes out, you want to heat your oven to 350. If you're going to be home and watching it, 375. And then take a piece of parchment paper. I kind of ball that up, set that in the center, and fill it with my pie beads. If you don't have pie beads, that's okay. You can just prick the bottom with a fork and your sides, and hopefully if it's properly chilled, then it will be exactly where it needs to be. And then take them out, cool them. Like I said, if you're making a lot of pies, you can do this ahead of time. You can do this the day before, and then the next day do your fillings, throw your fillings in, put them in for the required baking time, pull them out, and you should be good to go. Hopefully this video has helped you. Don't be intimidated by pie. I still mess it up all the time. It's not a perfect thing, but I think that's what's so great about pie. It's delicious, it's focused on the filling, but if you have a great base crust like this, then the whole thing will be absolutely delicious. So I hope that all of your pies turn out wonderfully successful, and I hope that you have an excellent Thanksgiving. Happy baking!